Good to go? Okay, folks, we're going to get started. My name is Suzanne DeFree. I'm with EDM, one of the UBM electronics brands, and I'm here today with a very full panel. A very friendly panel. And we're here to talk about the next generation of STEM, and STEM, of course, stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And really what we're trying to do here is figure out how we can first advance the slides. There we go. So how we can ensure that there are engineers to lead tomorrow's innovations. Last night at UBM Electronics, we had the ACE Awards, and it was this inspiring group of people coming up and accepting awards for the work that they do. And we just want to make sure that there are people to take their place when they retire and when they exit the workforce. So as it stands now, this is the amount of new bachelor's degrees in engineering that were given out in 2011, and that's according to the Engineering Workforce Commission. It's about 85,000 bachelor's degrees in engineering in just 1 year. And that may sound really great, but just so we know, that's what China produced last year. And that's just China. That's not Europe. That's not India. That's just China. And here's what the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology thinks that we need in terms of engineers over the next 10 years just to stay competitive in the U.S. So we find ourselves in a bit of a pickle here. It's a bit of a bad situation. And, you know, my first question, well, first let's introduce the panel, right? We've got all these great experts here to talk to us about STEM. We've got Stuart Christie, an Intel engineer and our ACE Mentor of the Year. We've got Naomi Price from UBM Electronics Innovation Generation website, which works tirelessly to encourage the next generation of STEM. We've got Ali Jabbar. He's with TI's Silicon Valley Labs. He's an R&D engineer director, and the labs, if I'm correct, just set up a new university program to do a lot of work with the universities locally. We've got Dave Wilson from NI. He's the academic relations director, and he flew in from Texas just for this event. He's a very good man.
Yeah.
We have Wayne Rust, who had worked with the winning team for the Innovation Generation, 7 girls, the Spectacular 7 out of Utah. They made an incredible project. We got to see a little bit of that last night at the ACE Awards as well. He's also an engineer at Millentia, if I'm pronouncing it. Millenniata. And that's also in Utah, Russ?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have Paul Rakow, who is an analog engineer. He's with ADI, and he's kind of known around town as an analog aficionado here in San Jose.
And who judged last year's LED Challenge.
Paul has also been mentored by some of the analog greats. He's been mentored by Pease and Williams, and now he's a mentor of his own. And I've seen the kids that he's mentored, and they're amazing, and they hang on his every word, and they rightfully should, because he's a great guy. So why do we find ourselves in this situation? That's the first question I want to toss out. And Dave, maybe you can take a stab at that first. What's going on here? Why aren't more kids getting into engineering and science and technology and math?
Well, I think part of this comes from what students think science and engineering really is all about. You know, in fact, if you take a look at the question, there's a question we ask the kids, what do you want to do when you grow up? And the answer has been fantastic. In fact, I think we're all proud of it. They want to make a difference. I'd like to make a difference. And it's like, we're all proud of that. And then about 15 years later, they're lawyers or bankers. And someone somewhere shifted the focus, obviously. So part of the issue is that it's not obvious that if you want to change the world, you've got to understand that science and engineering are the keys to making that change. You have to engineer the change. You actually have to go and make it happen through theory, through science, through engineering, and through technology. We go through our healthcare systems, and we know how expensive that is, but those machines are important, right? Optical coherence tomography, yes, this is important stuff, and it works. But the real question is that obvious to the kids? They think you mine iPhones out of a cave somewhere, right? And they just think it happens somehow. So it's all very mysterious. It's not very obvious to the kids. So I think a big part of this answer is that we have to do a better job at getting them to understand and demystifying all this issue around science and technology and make it extremely accessible. So just a little bit of start into that, what we're trying to do in NI is begin to make the things of science and engineering, things like electrical engineering, the mechanics part of it. Well, mechanics has robots, by the way. Like, that's the coolest thing ever. All the embedded stuff is this big now, and it's 10 times powerful than it ever was, and you can't see it. It's like it's all now in one chip in a corner or something somewhere doing everything, but you can't even find it, let alone recognize it if you did. So making it much more relevant, much more obvious to the kids, I think, is really critical. And that's one of the things that I'm starting to do with National Instruments. And we work with the ADI guys, we work with the TI guys, but we put little things together that says, all right, let's talk electronics, let's talk electric car. So I brought an electric car. This guy fits under the seat in front of me or fully in the overhead, right? It's all good. But the point is that when the student begins to see this, now it's obvious. It's like, oh yeah, I like cars. It's like, okay, power to the car, how do you control power to the car? What do those waveforms look like? And by the way, there's a little push that comes off the DC motor that looks like a ripple. Let's talk about frequency domain, shall we? And then FFTs become like sort of relevant when you want to do things like RPM. All that stuff suddenly becomes like interesting and tangible, relevant to things that they're interested in. So I think we're not attracting them because we're showing, circuits and chips and thinking, wow, close your eyes and imagine with me, if you will, that little blinking light is a load on a power grid. It's like, oh, that sounds exciting. Put that up against a video game. No, that just doesn't fly. I really think if it looks like it, if it's more authentic, and if it's reaching out, then they can begin to engage and understand the relevance of the theory. So it's sort of a marketing problem in my mind. Right. We're not doing a good job at articulating where the science and engineering is really used. And so they go off and ultimately they trade stocks and stuff.
Yeah. Has everyone seen this floating around on the internet? It's an idea of what people think engineers do. And my favorite section is the one with the train. That's what people, Joe Smith on the street, if you say, hey, I'm an engineer, he'll say, hey, what time does your train leave? That's what people think that engineers do, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Wayne, I saw you nodding a lot. Did you want to add to that?
Well, let me follow up here. I really like the comments as far as getting kids interested. One of the things that we found with our project was that the girls that we actually had involved in the project, they weren't interested in electronics per se. When you get an LED in front of them or a microcontroller, going, okay, so what? But actually having them put things together into a project, having them look at something, a bigger picture. In this case, they put together a Christmas tree out of PVC pipe. Turned out great. They had something in mind, a goal to do it, and by doing that hands-on, I think that's one of the other things that's very important for especially younger kids in the junior high, early high school age, is they have to get that hands-on. They have to get it in front of them. When I grew up, it was soldering that actually got me into, excited about electronics. It's that, that touchy-feely thing. There's not as much soldering now, but still, with that hands-on, that's what makes a difference.
And Naomi, you've called that do engineering in the past, the idea of actually doing something.
Right. I mean, I ran the LED challenge, and we had 70 teachers who worked on it. And after the challenge, I talked to the teachers to try to find out what made the difference between a team that succeeded and a team that didn't succeed. And one of the things that the teachers said was that, engineering and any of the sciences really are difficult. They're hard. And she said, the teacher said, and this was one teacher in particular, said, to get the kids going early and get them interested in it early makes an enormous difference, because then early on, they're getting the material, and they're not starting it later, and they're not going to college and saying, I don't have the background, I'm going to quit because I just can't do this, my grades are terrible. I think all of them agreed that getting the kids started early and getting them excited about it when they're young, so that it's not sort of demystifying the engineering, makes a big difference.
Now, Stuart, you've done a lot with mentoring younger kids, and as well as college level kids.
Yes, and I think getting them engaged before they realize it's engineering is one of the tricks. If you've got them making something, and it doesn't matter if it's Lego or it's even got any electronics in it, if they realize that engineers make things and not just artists, or we add an A to STEM and make it STEAM, I think it was one of the comments on your blog, I think that's a better way to get the kids engaged. They get something that they're interested in, and then they find out, oh, if I want to do this as a career, I have to pursue the science, the technology, the engineering, and the math. So I think that's a trick that we may have to play on the kids, is to get them involved with something that they like, and then show them how it's been done.
No, both NI and TI go into the classrooms and work very diligently at that. Would either of you like to comment?
Yes, absolutely. I want to
Just
talk
speak into
about.
the mic.
I want to talk about a couple of things. One is one activity that we had with fifth graders, basically, and what we have to make sure when we talk to the students is we don't try to kind of force the stuff to them. So what we did with these fifth graders, since everybody was talking about green energies and clean earth and so on and so forth, we went and talked to them about how can we produce actually clean energy. And we tried to show them how you do that. And by providing them with LEDs and solar, little small cells, and a little dollhouse, basically, we had the whole class excited and actually learning the engineering that way, as opposed to giving them, try to talk about the schematics and so on and so forth, basically. That was one of them. The other thing that we have been doing with the higher education is in the undergraduate schools, basically, we are bringing the interns inside the TI and actually asking them to design the next labs and take those labs back to the school with them and try to basically be proud of what they have done and try to take that devices or that platform basically back to school and train the other students within the school, as opposed to us basically going and asking them go design a motor drive and so on and so forth, basically. And also the other activities has been that TI has been involved with the STEM. National actually for past 5 years has financially contributed about $3.5–4 million to this project, and after the acquisition of TI acquisition, they have added another $1 million to the STEM projects, and the activities that TI has been doing is really helping the student by supplying them what they need to do the engineering work, and also go and teach and train them on how the devices work and so on and so forth.
Okay. Dave, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're probably most known for is the first robotics championships that go on. So we do just an awful lot of work for that. And it's pretty interesting when you start to look at it. We look at the kids, and if we went and told them, you need to go and do multi-threaded parallel programming on an embedded platform, I don't think we're attracting too many kids on that premise, right? But you put the robot out in front of them, and they're lining up. Like, that's what they want to do. And so motivating them in that way, and then now they want to do it. And they'll do anything they have to do to get that thing to move in the way that they want it to move. And so then programming, learning the circuitry, dealing with embedded platforms and systems just becomes the thing they walk through to get that result. The second piece of it is that the technologies are really getting very, very accessible now. The embedded platforms that we have, you can go in and program them, and in several hours even, maybe in an hour, you can make things happen, you know? And we can blink lights, and we've all blinked that LED, and that's great, you can do that. But now we have all the sensors that hook up to this stuff, so it's not a 3 or 4 or 5 week thing just to get the motor to turn off an embedded platform now. That's not the case. The tools are incredible at this point. So we've been involved a lot with the first robotics championship, all of that, and it makes a lot of sense for us. Now going into the classroom, I sort of look at that as sort of the extracurricular side. And the cool thing about that is these kids, you couldn't get them to come to school at first, and now they won't leave school. That's exactly the reports we hear. They're working until 11, 12 o'clock at night. They won't go home. You see, but that's exactly that passion and drive that has to accompany where the students are going to go. And so the second piece is all of this element of going into the classroom and getting the theory. We talk to the teachers a lot. The other thing I'll tell you is that a lot of the teachers in the K-12 space are not engineers. Well, you know that, right? In fact, I'm married to a teacher, and I can tell you right now, they're up at night thinking this 25 kids who are coming tomorrow need to be entertained, right? They've got to be paying attention, and that's just to keep order in the classroom, let alone, okay, now we're going to force, some level of algebra upon you. So the application of that stuff, in my mind, is paramount, and the technologies are coming along, and we've been working a lot with the teachers, trying to make the technologies that overcome a couple barriers. One is the cost. So we're working to drive the cost down just so that the school districts can afford it. And secondly is the accessibility. Keep the teacher in mind in this. If they have to set this thing up, like set up means there's nothing going to happen. It probably just won't happen. If you can plug this stuff in and get started with fundamental demonstrations and things like that, that then lead to easing you into the intricacies of it, then it will happen. So I think what we really have to do, and we've learned this by going into the classroom, we have to understand that you have to overcome the price barrier, but you have to establish the convenience factor as well. If you neglect the convenience factor, you will not get them to even step into the realm. And then ultimately, if you have richness of openness and you've walked pedagogically through how to expose that stuff, then you're going to be turning them on. Also, put it in a wrapper that excites the kids. When I just show them a bunch of transistors and processor chips on a board, no matter how much you want it to, that does not look like the power grid, okay? So we've been working to make those things look like the power grid when it goes in.
No, I know Naomi and I have been visiting a lot of local high schools and elementary schools, and at least from my perspective, they're much, much more crowded than they were when I was in school, and a lot more chaotic. Now,
It seemed like that.
Yeah. Now, Stuart and I believe Wayne, too, you've both been right in the trenches there, right in the schools.
Let me add one point here, and that is that the students sometimes, the robotics is great, great set, but each student actually grabs onto a different perspective of it as well. And so having multiple programs also helps the students instead of just one. One of the things, for example, the girl team that I had, one of the reasons they weren't interested in the current TSA program, which they actually became part of later on, was because it was kind of a boys' club, to do, boys type of toys. And so when we actually put together, we let them decide on exactly, well, what do you want to do? By the end of the project, they were actually passing notes in class, making binary sequences to program the LEDs, the light patterns on the trees. Now, nobody else in the class knew what these were. They were just a whole bunch of ones and zeros scratched on paper. They had actually written these long sequences of ones and zeros because they were programming the tree in the other classes. They were so excited about it. What grabbed them? Well, I don't know exactly what it was, but they were given the opportunity for them to choose and grab it. What this led to was that the teacher then approached them after they had finished the project and said, hey, you guys did such a great job. Why don't you come join us, do it? They turned around. Two of them actually competed at the state competition and actually went on to nationals, or going on to nationals. They did the state competition last week. What I'm saying is that having different options for different kids is very important because they're each going to grasp it differently, and that'll actually start them on their path.
That's great. Stuart, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think getting into the classrooms and seeing what they're like is definitely a good idea for anybody that's interested in pursuing STEM. I really liked the kids. That was the nice thing about it. My wife works at a school as well, and she comes home with the horror stories, not quite the how nice the kids really are. If you're going in there, they're very, very pleasant. They're very relieved not to have the teacher for the half hour or the hour that you're there. So that's a benefit as well. But I think also the fact that at least the schools I went to, there were robotic clubs, right? There were engineering clubs, there were science clubs. So the kids were somewhat self-selected already. So that certainly made it easier for me to go in, and I knew who I was targeting. And I'd just like to reiterate the first robotics piece. I was at the Phoenix Regional at local high school on Saturday, and I have never seen engineering cheerleaders before. There were cheer squads for the robots. There were mascots that would put that unfortunately poor Android man over there to shame. It was phenomenal. I mean, it was more exciting than a basketball game or whatever. It really, really was. It was the first one I've ever been to. It was the high school It was a basketball robotic competition. It was great, man. There was a bunch of us. No, we're all on Twitter together. Photographs going back and forth. It really, really was. It was a lot of fun for me just to attend. Never mind for the kids to actually enjoy.
So it sounds like you're almost inspired by these kids to.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, they are the next generation, and I think the ones that are self-selecting are certainly like that. I think the other piece is I'm involved a lot with social media, and I think letting other people know that these kids are doing these things is something that's very important as well, is getting the word out. So I was telling you earlier that the Student of the Year last year at the ACE Awards, we got enough feedback and YouTube views for him through his robotics project that the university gave him a free ride to grad school. So, and that was his girlfriend was fed up seeing his photograph in the school newspaper and the school front. It's still going on. He's on the back page of Popular Mechanics, the April issue. So it's an ever-growing thing. So if you can get the word out and make it exciting for the students, then other students will follow along.
Now, Paul, the kids you're mentoring, they really aren't kids. They're in their 20s, I believe.
One's almost 30 now.
One's almost 30. Wow. So you've been working with her for quite some time.
Yeah, since they went into college.
How has your experience been working with older next generation engineers?
It's a great thing. I'm a single guy with no kids, so it's like having this great vicarious kid. You didn't have to change the diapers. You didn't have to do any of that. Oh, you got a 4.0 at UCLA. Oh, he's got a great job as an R&D engineer at Tyco. And when I help him find a job with a friend, he says, "That's the best guy. How many more kids do you know like that?" I said, "Well, 2 is in Silicon Valley in my whole life." But I really take a serious enjoyment, and their successes are mine. And I try not to be the overbearing, you've got to do this, or I think this, so you should believe it. It's much more hands-off of just like enjoying them find their way, and a lot of introducing to other smart people like the people on this panel. And it's just been a really satisfying part of my life.
Excellent. Do you think that they'll grow up to mentor other kids?
I think so. At the Analog Aficionados party, my protege, Francis, I introduced him to John Massa, who mentored me. And then Jim Williams and Bob Pease had passed away, unfortunately, but they got to meet them a little. And they realized there's this continuity. And I didn't want to overtly say, now your obligation is when you're 40 or 50, find someone young that you can help bring up through the ranks. But I think they get it. It's like it's a part of your professional career is to help other professionals.
Right.
I found, oops, is it working? With talking about college students, I've noticed that college students who go out and have an intern program and have a mentor who they work with, even for a summer program, I think it makes an enormous difference because the students are able to apply what they've learned in college and see that it has real applications in the real world, and they go back to school with so much more energy and so much more commitment to learning the classroom projects that it's just hugely beneficial to them.
Dave, did you have something to add?
These are incredible comments, and this point about application is critical. I think all of us, most of us probably remember the first IBM PC, right? Like, do you actually remember that when it came out? So that wasn't there for us. So what did we do before that? Like, where did we spend all our time? It wasn't in front of simulations and computers and video games. We were just, if you were interested, you were out building stuff, right? You actually built stuff. And many of the students I see coming out now, they cannot tell you the difference between a regular screwdriver and a Phillips. And I wish that were a joke. But that's true. They haven't actually picked up those tools and applied them. But I think the question is, what's motivating them to apply it? You know, if it's that you have to sit down and dig through this textbook and memorize it because somehow it's going to be good for you, that's a long haul to get to that point. So the application point, I completely agree with. It has to be something that shows them that there's an end game that this all applies to and that is exciting. I really feel like we get what we celebrate. And take a look, if you've heard Dean Kamen speak, if you heard him speak, he gets into this point in a big way. We get what we celebrate. We get what we shine a light on. And look at what happens on our television programs, you know, like American Idol. Like, this is huge. It goes around the world. And somehow we think that that's where we should spend our time. How do you get kids to do like 400 sit-ups and hit a bag like for hours on end? You get that because we all go to the football games and 80,000 people stand up and they cheer when that kid makes the touchdown, right? Like, that's a rush. And everybody else is watching this. So we're celebrating that in the most possibly visible way imaginable. So FIRST Robotics, in my mind, is a way to kind of try to break through that and say, look, let's celebrate the real heroes and all the people walking around here, all the scientists and engineers. They're building the stuff that's going to save your life. It's going to feed your kids. It's going to feed the world, right? It's going to, all the communications, all of this stuff is being discussed right now in this room. So where are all those cameras, right? Where's the press? Where's the news? Where's the 100,000 screaming fans around this event? Well, let me tell you, this is what we have to do, and that's why Dean Kamen is exactly right. But these points are right. Make it relevant, make it interesting, show the destination, start with the end in mind, and show these kids where they're going to get by investing the time. And this is just the tools to get there. The tool is not the end. But we have to celebrate the achievements that, quite frankly, our societies, our whole world depends on this. And I think that's a big part.
Yeah. Now, Stuart, you're very active in design contests. In fact, yeah, I know you're working on the Cornell Cup quite actively.
Yeah, I think the design contest is something that we've championed for a number of years. 10 or maybe 12 years have been running in China. And there, it's 186 universities competed in the 2010, 186 teams competed in the 2010 competition. And there were 400 universities that applied to do it. We've been running it for 10 years in China. We've been running it for 2 or 3 years in India. We have 50 or 60 teams there. We've finally got one started this year in America, and we've got 25 now. So the investment from our company isn't even there. So it would be good if, one of the things I'm talking about here is if we can get other companies to come alongside us and help run some of those competitions as well. I'm actively looking for people here at the show to help do that. Because I think those competitions do generate the excitement. You know, there are teams going to take minibuses and drive them down from New York to Disneyland, Disney World, Florida, wherever, right? Because that's where the finals are, right? So we are celebrating some of those things in America, but we need to make it bigger and better.
I had working at Analog Devices, I had the joy. Yesterday, Barry Gilbert came down from the Northwest Labs in Portland. He invented the Gilbert cell. He's a famous analog engineer. I thought he'd be all stuck up and he's English and that. He's the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. And he loves helping younger people. All the young engineers at Analog Devices, he had all the time in the world. We went to lunch. But two things were interesting. He was 9 years old when World War II ended. And he got interested, the military surplus in England, it was $1 to get these radar sets and all this. That coupled with the fact that electronics in those days, and what interested him wasn't ICs, it was magnetrons and tubes that glowed. We're not going to, I'm sorry Texas Instruments, Analog Devices, we're not going to get junior high kids interested in chips. We'll get them interested in robots, so we got to move up as chip companies, we got to jump up to the system level. And the second thing is, even software, National Instruments might get them excited about that, but this thing in colleges about you got to learn your differential equations and this abuse that, well, it turns out they end up being good engineers. I use the computer for math. I don't do any math. I don't like math. I use National Instruments Multisim. Oh, this is fun, and I hook the instrument up. He solves it. Solves it better than, well, maybe not differential equations, but it solves it better than the math in the book that didn't assume the poles were apart. Oh, okay. So getting that thing of like, we have computers to do the math now. We want you to understand the principle. Williams was big on this. Mm-hmm. We want you to understand what's going on, and he had a great descriptive language. This servos that, and this pulls this up. But you didn't see him breaking out the double integrals. And I think that's important. Because we can then get to the junior high school kids and the high school kids. And then if they do get abused in college by these math professors, they'll understand it's worth doing for the fun of making something like this.
Right. Dave, did you want to add? Ali, did you want to answer that?
Yes, actually, for us to excite the interns and the students, when we bring them into the TI and labs, basically, we try to not actually try to solve those equations and try to ask them to design this heavy-duty analog circuits and so on and so forth. And what excites them, we leave them open to think, to see what they want to do during the internship, and then help them to excel on whatever they want to do. And at the end of the 3-4 months, basically, mentorship, after they go back with the system, with whatever they built into school, they try to talk to the peers, basically, and excite them as well that how fun was actually doing engineering, actually hands-on engineering. Old days, I remember at every corner of the street there was some teenage kids had cars, and everybody was under the hood, basically, really doing real engineering work. And that is not happening. I think that's what's missing from, I'm not saying let's bring all the grease and oil and whatever to back to the streets again, but really that's what excites the engineering. That's what the engineering is, the synthesis and doing the stuff, basically, looking under the hood, basically. And I think that's what excites our interns, that they work with us. And we work with the interns from at the very, very, very entry level to the undergrads, all the way to postdocs. Of course, the postdocs are doing their own innovation and so on and so forth. But we have actually folks that actually will start working with us from undergraduate all the way through the PhD, basically, within universities close by here. And again, the thing was we let them actually to grow and come ask questions and get excited, oh, what are you doing, what are you doing? And actually have assigned pals, basically, so-called. So really manager doesn't go talk to them. So they start kind of thinking they have to be on a schedule and have to do this and whatever. Really the pals were helping them and basically getting them excited to work, to do real engineering work.
And Ali, if I'm correct, a lot of TI's upper management started off in that internship program, right?
Yes.
And they worked their way up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it definitely pays off.
Absolutely.
You know, I had a thought. I can remember my first car. You think back, you remember your first car, right? My first car was a 1972 AMC Gremlin. I bought it with 77,000 miles on it. I drove it for 4.5 years. I was under the hood every single month. Every single month. But, you know, you think about it. I didn't necessarily want to be under the hood. I wanted to go somewhere. That was my motivation. Like, I wanted to go out Friday night. Yeah, I'm going to be under the hood Friday morning, you know, if I'm going to make that happen. But that was my motivation, and I learned a ton of stuff. I learned everything. Distributor caps, rotors, points, spark plugs. I cleaned the spark plugs every month in that car. I had to. I was chiseling stuff off of them, in fact. But I learned so much. So I was motivated to work through a system. 4 years later, when they put it up on the jacks to check out, it broke in half. It had broken, yeah, rusted through. But the point is that I think we have to ask the question to the students, what do you want to do? And so we asked that question once. I had 3 students decide, we want to build a hybrid electric vehicle. And their senior design project, you know, how much is that like? It's like 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And you're like, ooh. And so the answer is yes, yes, yes. Now, how? So the answer to that was an electric bicycle. That's hybrid. You have to pedal it, and it was electric. And we built a whole controller. You don't know PID until you've ridden PID, and it's not tuned. right? The integral coefficient, yeah, you'll figure that out. Integral windup, oh yes, integral windup. You will learn all about integral windup and you will fix it and you'll do it right if you're the pilot on that bicycle. But the answer was yes. So we had a $1,000 project. We rode this thing and they learned everything that I think they needed to about a hybrid electric vehicle in that period of time. Just fantastic. Another one, they said, I want to build a CAT scanner. And the answer is yes. How do you do that? Well, you know, it turns out laser pointers are electromagnetic radiation. They shine through translucent objects like X-rays do through opaque objects. You get absorption. Phototransistors on the other end, you get the absorption curve. That's correct. Little stepper motor? No, just a little pulse, and you can estimate the degrees. Built a little CAT scanner this big, and we resolved the grape inside a plastic cylinder, and it was the most beautiful image that I have ever seen.
I'd like to make a couple of points about motivation.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found out with the girls that I worked with as far as motivation. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. One of the things I found out about motivation was that, like anything, it's much better to have pull than push. One of the things about our education system right now is we push things on kids.
Agreed.
Okay. What I found out is that a little bit of push is okay to get them interested. We put a lot of things out there. If you just put it out there, they're not going to get it. Okay. But if you push just a little bit, they can come back and they can find out more of what they want to do. One of the things that we found out about the girls is we were thinking about on the LEDs of just having, 8 branches all, connected to the microcontroller with just, 8 I/O lines. Very, very simple. The girls can understand it and so on and so forth. Well, the girls actually got in there and said, we actually want to go through and we want to control every single one of them. And we're going, okay, let's go through. How do you do that? They went from going through the very simple of a hands-on tutorial to learning multiplexing to dig into it. And so they ended up with a full brick project. Now, they wanted to do more, and so we actually had to also control them a little bit and say, okay, they wanted to do a full music with it and have the tree sway back and forth. Well, we can put that at the end if we have time. Yes. The answer is yes, but not now. But having them actually pull it, then they were the ones that were pulling, wanting more information. I gave out a data sheet on the transistor, and I gave them just the top page just so they can know where the emitter, collector, and base were. Well, they came back and said, this is only page 1 of 10. Where's the rest of the pages? Do you really want it? Well, yeah. Okay. So I copied off all 10 pages. They took it home. They came back the next day with questions. What does this curve show here, So we went into more. They didn't get it all. But what was interesting is you gave them a little bit, and then they pulled the rest of the information from us.
I can say MIT tried something, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago where the freshmen would come in and they decide a project, MP3 player in an Altoids box or a robot or something. And then the deal was, well, here's all the professors. Now, what do you want to learn? Oh, a control thing? Well, go talk to that professor. It was wildly popular. The kids loved it. But it took too much of the professor's time, so they dropped it after a year. But that's really the way to educate people. It's not this push thing that you alluded to.
Right.
I've seen that as well.
I think MIT's got a project now where the students are actually given 2 months to do their own project.
Oh, they're back in.
They design it. They brought it back in, I believe. Yeah, I was reading about it.
Oh,
so
good.
it's they decide what they want, and they have to go and find the professors. And we've worked a lot with professors at multiple universities. And the best professors or the best successes is, again, with the professors that pool the information. If we try and go in and sell, this is what we'd like you to do with these classes, or this is the thing, here's the money we're going to give you, it's not terribly successful. If we put it out there and say, here's the project, if you want to do it, sign up for it, and they come to us, those teachers are motivated themselves. And we find more success with that, and then their students find more success as well. So I think it's not just the students, it's the teachers need to be the pool from the industry as well.
And I think with the teachers of the younger grades too, those teachers often don't have the technical training. And what I found running the contest is you really need to encourage the teachers to reach out into the industry or into local colleges to get the mentors to help the teams, because you'll have a teacher who thinks they can handle this electronics, and then they start to struggle and the entire project just gets dropped. where if they find a mentor, then the mentor is there, as the backup or the resource to help the teachers and to motivate the kids and to be the person who, if they're struggling, they can ask the questions. And the mentor is obviously not the one who says, okay, I'll jump in, I'll do this for you. No, the mentor is the one who can answer the questions and who can be the one that the teacher uses to get the project going.
We've talked a lot about mentoring, and it's obviously a vital part to encouraging this next generation to take on engineering and science, technology, and math parts of STEM. I'm wondering how you all find the time to do it, because you're already very busy people. How do you find the time to mentor and to get out into these schools?
When I met Francis, he'd helped a buddy. He had summer interned at Lam Research, the semiconductor machinery place. My buddy was building a full-size airplane in his garage, and it's like, hey, you'll do slave labor as a summer intern next summer. So then I met Francis, and I gave my friend a contract. I was a consultant. So then Francis helped us, and he did all the work, and my buddy collected the $80 an hour, and I'm like, so then I actually gave Francis a summer job for me, and then I got him involved at National Semiconductor, now Texas Instruments. I got him a summer job. So we had contact like that as an employer-employee, and that's how it started with my mentor. I worked for him. And it was a new thing to actually like and respect your boss that much. It's like, they've been jerks at Ford Motor. How come this guy's so cool? And so we had common ground. He rode a Harley in the old days. I got all these Harleys. So then it kind of spills over to after work, you go have a drink or something. And it's not like you're making time. It's something you just enjoy doing.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. That's exactly right. To be honest with you, you got time. I mean, I know you find that hard to believe, but you've got time. Like you're sitting here listening to me right now, right? And I'm eating up some of your time. You've got it. And I think this is exactly the point that Ray makes. You have to understand that this is about motivation. Like if you want to do this, you will do it. And I'll tell you something else. You get involved in a project with these kids, you're going to be more fired up about it. You're just going to want to do this. And, I go back to, we have a teacher in Austin, his name's John Sperry, works at the high school. And he said this to us, and we just go back to it all over and over again. He said, ask your students what they want to do and give them the tools to do it. And that's exactly what Ray said. That's the point. What do you want to do? And then the answer is going to be, here's all the stuff to make it work. And they will, and you will find the time to get that done. I can tell you what, look at the commitment kids make to sports. You tell me, how do they have time? When I was in high school, I wasn't playing sports, how do you have the time for that? I was studying. I was studying algebra and physics in high school. I couldn't imagine, staying after school for 3 hours? No, come on. We got the time. The kids have the time. We've got the time. And to Ray's point, you get into this thing, you will be motivated. And, you'll stay up another hour or two every night. That's what you'll do.
Actually, I want to add on to this, having a time to mentor the interns, basically. What I have found, actually, during the past 10 years I've been working directly with universities, is actually these mentoring the interns has helped us a lot and saved us a lot of time as opposed to really spending time. For instance, if I have to read these 10 different things in the societies, 10 different buses to see which one of these is going to fit the best with, I don't know, with this device or with this thing that we're going to build, as opposed to me going and reading all these things, I'll ask him or her to go and do the research on that one. And he goes, looks at this, he learns, and he comes back with suggestions, and so on and so forth. Actually, it's helping us a lot. For the past 10 years, I would say I have worked at least with 100 interns. And believe me, most of my success has been based on these interns. We actually one of the most successful one was back 5 years ago. I've hired an intern from Italy, hired an intern from UC Berkeley, and take them through graduation, show them a little bit of how to design, ICs and so on and so forth. And after that, we actually worked on the research for renewable energy, basically. And all of these folks were interns that they did the project. They actually were able to extract more energy from solar panels. And again, these are all interns that you just give them a little bit of clue of where you want to go. And these are the guys actually driving us. First of all, they are much younger than me and much more energy. So they can do 10 times probably more work than I can do basically at this time. So really this internship and mentoring has a great benefits for all the companies as well. It's not really us spending time.
Well, speaking of finding time, I find us just about out of time. We're going to keep the conversation going. We've got a networking session if anyone would like to join us over in the Marriott in the Blossom Hill room. We've got a ton of students coming in who are looking for experienced engineers to chat with. I do think we have time for one or two questions if anyone... Can you get to the mic?
Hi. I would assume that all the organizations represented here have relationships at the university level with the engineering schools. I wonder if any have relationship with the education colleges that are part of the same universities, so that nurturing the student who may have a technology bent gets to be part of the teacher's curriculum going to school.
So I'll take that real quick. Yeah, we definitely do. In fact, we work with some of the groups, like the Project Lead the Way groups, also like the Southern Regional Education Board and their Preparation for Tomorrow, which are more of a technology focus, career technology focus. And yeah, we're putting a lot of time and energy into that. And once again, we're finding that the relevance of the technology is paramount. This stuff has to be something that they're going to see and put their hands on and use. And then back to Ray's point, once that happens, they're gonna be motivated to find out all they need to know to actually participate in that. Yeah.
Just a comment, the first robotics competition, the Silicon Valley regional competition, is this Friday and Saturday at the San Jose State Event Center. So it's just a couple days away.
Yeah.
They'll be putting their robots, assembling them and getting them ready and inspected tomorrow, Thursday, and then Friday they'll start their competition, and Saturday. And on Thursday they'll be doing some practice sessions, but the robots, some of them may not be completely running during the practice sessions.
That's great.
I have a question for you on that
Yes.
one. Is it open to the public?
It's open to the public.
okay.
It is free.
Yep.
You can park at the 7th Street Garage at 7th Street and San Fernando in San Jose. If that one fills up, there's also a garage on the other end of campus. It's at 10th Street. I'm sorry, the 7th Street and San Salvador, and then the 10th Street garage is at 10th and San Fernando.
Okay, we've got one more question.
First of all, I want to say thank you to you guys for all your efforts to get this stuff going. And I'm an instructor in Minnesota at a community college, and we're trying to do some similar efforts as well. We were fortunate enough to see 48 VEX robotics teams throughout the state of Minnesota this last year, which was an amazing feat from having none to 48, and it was all grant funded. But it seems like a lot of these efforts are kind of a grassroots campaign. You know, a couple engineers, some pockets of technology groups here trying to get the thing off the ground. And given the first slides you put up, I think we're in need for a more full frontal attack, such as a change in the educational funding system, a change in our curriculum. You talked about maybe you don't want to push that on children, but every engineer I've ever talked to, their experience started when they were a little kid.
Yeah.
You know, my brother, myself, Dad would bring home radios from Goodwill, and we'd dissect these things, and sometimes we'd fix them, you know. But that's where it starts, and that doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yep.
Something breaks, you throw it away.
Yep.
So I would argue that we need, at very early ages, to have technical curriculum in the high schools, and in the grade schools and the high schools, continue it. And we need to have funding, we need to have support, and this needs to happen yesterday.
Yeah. I actually know a superintendent in the New York City school system who has decided to make STEM one of the specials, and specials are usually art and music, you know, those classes that you go to every other day or something like that. She has decided to make STEM a special. and she's working on this program, and we've encouraged her to distribute it to other schools and talk about how she's doing that, and we'll make sure that that information gets up on edn.com for everyone to share. All right, well, I want to thank everyone on the panel. I know many of you made a long journey to get here, and you're all working very hard as it is. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you to everyone out in the audience.
Thank you.